Fudo is a delinquent boy who was transferred to an all-girls school to be disciplined for sending students to hospitals. But instead learning his lessons, he goes against all their rules, riz up all of the baddies there, and starts clapping them hard. At the start, Fudo arrives at the academy on his first day and realizes how every girl on campus has a weapon, while every male student looks like ugly chicks. Out of nowhere, a fat, chopped-looking dude named Masuko shows up to greet Fudo. Seeing the confusion, Masuko explains that every guy at this school has to wear makeup, as it's part of the rules. But Fudo couldn't care less, and declares that he will live life as he likes. Meanwhile, the top girls running the academy, known as the Supreme Five Swords, gather for an urgent meeting. Their leader, Rin, brings up a serious concern about the new student, Fudo, who once hospitalized 40 students at his old school. Just then, another girl named Amu walks in and casually mentions that she fought Fudo before, and she warns them to be careful of his move, the Spirit Bullet. Later, Fudo walks into class, and right away, Rin and her crew confront him, ready to strike. They explain that since their school turned from an all-girls school into a co-ed, the girls have been armed to protect themselves from guys who might get too freaky. Then, Rin has until the bell rings to put him in his place, but Fudo has no intention of following any rules. Suddenly, Fudo teleports beneath a girl's skirt, horrifying her, then bolts to the window for his escape. Rin immediately chases after him, determined to bring him down before the bell rings. Fudo taunts her the entire way, mocking her authority. As the fight continues, Fudo dodges Rin's sword strikes with his legs, which impresses her. However, she activates her mirrored breathing technique and moves even faster, forcing Fudo to up his game. Then, she activates the dragon's tail and the chest strike, which manages to cut his shirt open. Fudo tries to counter, but Rin uses her crane stance and manages to cut his cheek open, drawing first blood. While he's surprised by how sharp she is, he calmly pulls out a pair of gloves from his pocket. With them on, he begins deflecting her attacks, but she still manages to drive him back into a tree. Then, while all the other Supreme Swords watch closely, Fudo slips under her guard and manages to land a touch on her side. Rin still thinks she's in control, but Fudo tells her that while she's got a sword, he's got a gun. Without warning, he powers up and unleashes a powerful strike straight into her, launching her across the yard. The girls are stunned, and Rin tries to crawl back for her sword, but Fudo pins her down and tells her to yield. She glares up at him and mentions the Spirit Bullet. Fudo immediately gets serious and demands to know who told her about that move. Just then, Nono smacks him on the head, knocking him forward and straight into Rin's face. They kiss, and her mask shatters from the impact. Fudo quickly backs off and starts blaming Nono for what just happened, while Nono throws the blame back at him. But Rin stands up, sword in hand, her face red from being both angry and flustered. Trying not to cry, she promises Fudo that she's going to slice his Slim Jim into cocktail sausages. Later that night, Nono is about to finish her bath when Mary walks in to confront her. Mary wants to talk about what happened with Rin and says she plans to be the next one to discipline Fudo. Right then, a short girl named Choka storms in and claims she's the only one who can handle Fudo. That kicks off an argument between her and Nono, since Nono also wants to take revenge for Rin. Meanwhile, Fudo is soaking in the boy's bath, looking at a nasty bruise he got from crashing into a tree. Masuko's there too, asking Fudo how he managed to take down the leader of the Supreme Swords before the first class even ended. In the bath, Fudo explains how he spent his entire childhood mastering the move that beat Rin, the Spirit Bullet. Then, he asks Masuko how to get a permit to leave the school grounds. Masuko says he'll need Rin's stamp, which Fudo knows is unlikely. But that's not all, as he also needs approval from the rest of the Supreme Swords. Suddenly, Fudo gets a headache, so Masuko offers him aspirin and shows him how to use the school's student menu to order supplies. Fudo looks at the list and tells him that he knows that the boys need something a bit more extra like a Mia Khalifa film, and Masuko admits there's a smuggler who can get better stuff, but it'll cost him extra. After hearing that, Fudo requests a cake, and the next day, Fudo tries to win over the girls in class with cake, but they all scatter, not wanting to be anywhere near him. He asks a student where Rin is, but she insults him for showing his face at all and tells a classmate named Mijai to roast him. Mijai tells him Rin's out sick, probably from catching something through their accidental kiss. Fudo walks away and finds Masuko to ask if the girls eat lunch in their dorms. Masuko says that wouldn't make sense since the dorms are far from the cafeteria. But then he realizes what Fudo's thinking and tries to stop him from meeting Rin. Meanwhile, Rin is having a dream of her dark past, and at that moment, Rin wakes up feeling groggy and blames Fudo for making her sick. While tossing around in bed, she's shocked to realize that she actually craves another kiss and starts freaking out. She senses someone coming and quickly puts on her damaged mask, and just then, Fudo climbs through her window. She grabs her sword to swing at him, but he grabs the blade and asks why she's pushing herself so hard while sick, and she gets flustered. Fudo compliments her room and gives her a box of cakes. Then, after getting a close look, he tells her she's actually really cute. She gets flustered, and he asks why she won't just take the mask off completely. She says she can't, as without it, she wouldn't be able to face people. When he finally asks for the permit, Rin tells him to forget it, as only students who represent the school well get one, and after what Fudo did, he doesn't qualify. He asks if students wear their uniforms when they're off campus, and Rin misinterprets it, accusing him of wanting to see her in normal clothes. Fudo plays along and says that he does, which leads her to give him the permit anyway, pretending it's just repayment for the cake. He jokes about giving her another kiss as thanks, but the fever scrambles her brain, and she stumbles into him, nearly showing him what her mom made. Just then, Nono arrives with food, but when she sees Fudo over Rin, she loses it and activates all the traps hidden in the dorm room, forcing Fudo to bolt out for his life. Outside, Choka hears the sirens and sees him running. She pulls out a whip and apologizes to Nano in advance, saying she'll be the one to take Fudo down first. She stops him and introduces herself as Mary's little sister and the head of the Junior 5 Swords. Nono soon catches up and explains that Choka just made up her entire cringe-sounding backstory and really just wants to be in charge when Nono is the real leader of the Junior 5 Swords. Choka doesn't care and attacks, but Nono joins in, which interrupts Choka, and it buys Fudo time to slip on his gloves. The two girls agree to team up and take him down. Soon, students across the school crowd around windows to watch. Nono goes in first and pushes Fudo back with a strong combo, and Fudo realizes she's using the same moves as Rin. Choka then reintroduces herself dramatically and cuts his arm with her whip, which annoys Fudo. As she readies another strike, the two explain that what Fudo is about to face is a level 2 correction, which means getting punished by two girls at once, something only the Empress has survived. Fudo dodges Choka's attacks, then blocks Nono's follow-up. When they try to combine their efforts, he cleverly grabs Choka's whip and uses it against them, joking that they need to work on their teamwork. Then he unleashes the Spirit Bullet, blasting Nono straight into Choka. The blast leaves Nono struggling to move, and on top of Choka. Then, as Fudo moves in to finish the fight, Nono flashes back to Rin's kiss with him and suddenly starts crying. Choka tries to comfort her, but then joins her crying, and the entire school turns on Fudo, calling him a complete, utter degenerate, and he runs back in defeat. Later, Rin meets up with him outside school and quietly hands him the pass, now signed with her stamp. Fudo thanks her and walks off, but just then, Nono and Choker rush over to snitch to Rin about everything that just happened, and she gets so mad, she passes out on the spot. That night, Choka is still traumatized, and Mary thinks about how to deal with Fudo while taking a bath, refusing to let Fudo disrespect her precious Choka. The next day, Fudo gets to class and sees Rin waiting for him. But this time, everyone else, including Masuko, stays far away, scared and grossed out. Rin draws her sword again and tells him she's making herself his personal supervisor in order to protect everyone from his pickle of doom. A few hours later, Choka storms into the showers, barging in on fellow students bathing to find Mary, and then she finds Mary down in the cafeteria. Mary, in the middle of dinner, tells her not to stress, as she's already made up her mind to discipline Fudo for what he did. But Choka fills her in on what really happened, and at the same time, Nono has just finished explaining the whole thing to Rin, but Rin's still planning to make a move against Fudo herself. Meanwhile, Fudo's chilling out with Masuko while he tries to warn Fudo about the danger he's in. He tells him that Mary and Rin are both seriously ticked off, and Masuko explains just how far they might go for revenge. Fudo asks him if it's true that someone once survived a level 2 correction from both of them. Masuko nods and starts telling the story of how the Empress used nothing but her bare hands to tear open Rin's defenses, and how Mary got her sword snapped like a twig and was completely outmatched. Hearing this, Fudo suddenly realizes that the Empress sounds a lot like the same psycho who nearly tore him apart before. But when Masuko informs him that the Empress is a nickname for a girl, he starts to think that maybe he's confused her with someone else. The next morning, Rin wakes him up, and as soon as he's out of bed, she hits him with a question about whether he's been acting freaky to more girls. But he quickly tries to explain what really went down with Nano and Choka. She tells him not to bother, as she already knows. Still, she pulls out her sword and says she'll be watching him closely now, checking his bag to make sure he's not hiding anything shady. While Rin lays out the rules of their new arrangement, Mary and Choka show up. Mary paints Fudo as a woman diddler who doesn't deserve freedom, but Rin insists it was all a big misunderstanding. She says she'll take full responsibility and keep him in line. But that only makes Mary angrier, so angry she starts yapping in French. Choka has to remind her to speak normally again, and even then, Mary fumbles and ends up using a language book to accuse Rin of falling for Fudo just because of the kiss. Rin tells Fudo to leave so she and Mary can talk privately, but Mary orders Choka to follow him. She tells her to make sure he's warmed up before Mary slices and dices him later. The moment Choka catches up to Fudo, they start fighting. She pulls out a new whip technique, hoping he won't be able to dodge it. Fudo uses his belt to block it and tries to explain how powerful he is, but then Choka suddenly freezes and collapses, and he realizes with horror that his Slim Jim has been out the whole time. As he scrambles to get dressed, he spots a familiar face from his past Amu. Meanwhile, back with Rin and Mary, Rin's out of breath. Mary tells her to stop being pathetic and storms off to go hunt down Fudo. Back with Fudo, he tries to get a good look at Amu, whom he remembers as a boy and how he once offered to make him her servant after nearly taking his life. He calls out to her, but she stops him, saying she needs time to recover before they can fight again. He asks if she's the same person who nearly ended him, and how she turned into a woman, but she rolls her eyes and says she's always been one. Before he can say anything else, Mary arrives, completely panicking at the sight of Fudo's ding-a-ling. But she gets distracted by the sound of Choka still going wild somewhere nearby and runs off to check on her. Amu, meanwhile, heads to the auditorium, where she sits in front of a Buddha statue and reflects on her last fight with Fudo. She remembers how fast his punches were, how he even managed to hit her first before she brought him down. When he kept fighting, she knocked him out and offered to spare him if he pledged himself to her, but he refused. As she thinks about how she hesitated in their most recent encounter, her heart starts pounding, and she smashes the statue, refusing to admit her feelings for him. Meanwhile, Fudo and Mary are in the middle of a fight. He dodges most of her moves, but she finally cuts through his gloves. Fudo struggles as Mary slices into him again and again, easily finding weak points. Eventually, she tells him he's got nothing left, as she has cut away everything that made him strong. Fudo decides to take a chance and rushes her. She sees it coming and stabs him again, but he blocks it with his gooning magazine.
Good job!
While she jumps back to regroup, he gets in close and uses the magazine to knock her out cold. And then he activates his magic bullet and blasts her away. Humiliated and defeated, Mary begs him to finish her, but he ignores her and complains about his ruined magazine. She starts acting sus, asking if he's going to treat her the same creamy way he did Rin. And when he says that he won't, it sends her into a spiral, thinking that he must find her ugly, unlike how he treated Rin and the others. As a desperate last move, she offers her twin sweeties to him, but he turns her down again. She asks if he's into rice cakes instead, and he admits he likes both, but she's making it way too easy, which just ruins his vibe. When he finally asks for her stamp on the permit to leave the school, she shoves it into her melons, forcing him to reach for it. But even then, he pulls away at the last second, saying no. That's when she finally realizes that not every guy is a creep. Just then, Fudo hears a voice that sends chills down his spine. It's Rin. Seeing Mary's melons being out, Rin doesn't wait for an explanation and starts swinging her sword. Mary has to step in and explain what happened, but she leaves out the part where she got rejected. Then, Mary agrees to stamp the permit and declares she'll be supervising Fudo with Rin. The two start bickering immediately, both claiming they have more authority over him. At the start of the new week, Fudo just wants to enjoy his lunch in peace, and he politely asks the girls for some space, but they refuse, saying he needs to be watched at all times. Trying to throw them off, he makes a joke about how he can see their clams and that they smell like the sea. While they scramble to recover from the insult, another one of the 5 swords, Warabi, returns from her trip with her partner, Kyobo, expecting a warm welcome from her fellow Supreme Swords. She's disappointed to find them all too busy trying to send Fudo to meet Ace. Annoyed, she decides it's time to take control herself. Later, in the office, Warabi sets up a bulletin board and begins reviewing Fudo's situation. She blames Rin and Mary for getting too emotional and wants them held accountable. She calls for votes, but only Satori bothers to show up for her. Satori doesn't care much for politics, but she just wants to see Fudo get humiliated in style. Later in the canteen, Tsukuyo is about to eat when Warabi gathers her loyal supporters and starts planning something big. That afternoon during gym class, a crowd forms. Fudo follows the commotion and is stunned to find his massive roommate, Masuko, tied to a cross. He rushes to help, but Rin blocks him, and Mary says there's something more important to deal with. Suddenly, Warabi appears on the rooftop, announcing her master plan to take control of school discipline. She reveals a huge banner for a festival of death, and while she rambles on about world domination, Fudo interrupts and asks why Masuko is tied up like that. Warabi explains it's punishment for smuggling in a box of cakes. Then, she offers Fudo a challenge to free Masuko and earn a stamp for his permit by completing a series of trials. The rest of the swords demand to know what she's doing, but she brushes them off, claiming she already got approval. She sprays them with a water cannon and sends the other students back to class. After that, Warabi's enforcers, the Warabi Musketeers, show up. Tsunami, Kinu, and Nico flash an approval slip signed by Warabi and Satori, and the other Supreme Swords feel betrayed and demand answers. Warabi calmly explains that her strictness is the only way to stop them from obsessing over Fudo's glizzy. But the girls blush and insist they're just doing their duty, but their bickering proves otherwise. Warabi silences them and kicks things off by revealing a sumo ring. Fudo's pumped at the sight of the sumo ring, but Rin yanks his ear, warning him it's no laughing matter. Mary tells him the best chance they've got is to get through the first challenge without a hitch. Fudo asks them about the games Warabi played, and they inform him about a past incident where Warabi set a student on fire and chased him with gasoline until a building went up in flames. Just then, the Warabi's musketeers toss over to them sumo belts, and they say the belts can be worn over clothes, but Fudo's already stripping down. Suddenly, Choka and Nano burst in, demanding that the musketeers show respect to the 5 swords. They fight, but Tsunami quickly disarms Nono and flips her over. Kinu follows up with a gut hit to Choka, telling her to stay focused. Seeing the girls overpowered, Rin and Mary step in, stop the fight, and help Nono and Choka up. They promise to settle things later, but for now, they need to prepare for the match. The musketeers offer help with the belts, but the girls see that Fudo is already suited up. Rin quickly pulls him aside to make him adjust hers, but when he does so, she feels the tingly sensation your mother felt after a night with your mailman. After Rin is finished, Mary gets freaked out and asks Rin to do hers instead. But Rin pretends that she forgot, forcing Mary to go through the same experience as well. On their way to the ring, Rin tries to comfort Mary, but Mary snaps back, saying that what really upset her was that Fudo spent more time adjusting Rin's belt than hers. As the match gets ready to start, the camera crew goes live, broadcasting the fight to the whole school, and the girls panic, trying to hide their rice cakes. When Fudo steps into the ring and asks who he's up against, the musketeers scold him for assuming he could just start. Then, Kyobo drops into the ring like a boulder, nearly giving Fudo a heart attack. He panics, wondering why he has to fight a literal bear, and Warabi explains that Kyobo is one of her musketeers, while the little guy with the bowl cut was just a confused stagehand. Mary and Rin protest, saying that it's totally illegal to make them fight someone like Kyobo. Warabi smirks and says if any one of them manages to beat him, she'll let them all off the hook and declare them the winner. Before they can argue, Fudo tosses them his jacket and says he's got this. He stretches, gets in position, and Warabi smashes her soda bottle to start the match. Fudo charges first and actually pushes Kyobo back. But then Kyobo raises his claws to slice Fudo in half. Fudo responds with his magic bullet, but Kyobo deflects it. Fudo switches tactics and nearly cracks Kyobo's spine. The beast swings again, but Fudo dodges and sweeps his legs out. Everyone screams at him to stop, as he could get crushed, but Fudo reminds them that he's trained with professional sumo wrestlers. He hauls Kyobo to the edge of the ring, drops him suddenly, and dodges the counterattack. As Kyobo stumbles, his belt slips off, and Fudo explains that, according to sumo rules, a fighter loses if their belt falls off mid-match. Embarrassed, Kyobo quickly turns to hide himself, and Fudo fist bumps the girls while Warabi, stunned, tumbles off the fence. Her musketeers rush to check on her, but Warabi's already pulling out her sword. She orders them to get serious because she's not letting Fudo survive the next round. As Kyobo walks off in embarrassment, Fudo looks up at Masuko and wonders how someone managed to get his fat blubbers up there. But then he notices that everyone else has disappeared. Rin and Mary already have a hunch about what's coming next, especially once the doors slam shut. While Warabi's underlings help her into a flashy outfit, she congratulates Fudo on completing the challenge and tells him he'll get her stamp if he can make it to the rooftop. As the camera crew gets set up to film Rin and Mary in their sumo belts, Saki and Mijai stop caring about everything else and focus only on the spectacle. Warabi then reveals her most brutal challenge, yet that Fudo has to fight all 3 of her musketeers and 10 battle-hardened warriors who've trained just to prove guys are trash. The camera cuts back to Rin's awkwardly exposed rice cakes, and before the next chaos begins, she and Mary warn Fudo that this entire thing is clearly a trap. He agrees but says he can't just abandon Masuko, still stuck on that cross, and tells them to sit this one out to stay safe. But as he tosses his jacket off, the girls decide they're in it with him. While they talk strategy, Warabi watches them through a hidden camera to stay ahead. Later, Fudo hears the girls struggling to put on their clothes, and when he turns around to help, he accidentally catches a full view of their curves and nearly loses it. Right before he escapes, Nono and Choka appear and slap him silly, then ask him to pass a message to the girls. When the doors open for the next challenge, Mary and Rin learn about Nono and Choka's plan to take on the waiting feminist army. They try to scold Fudo for letting them go alone, but he insists they trust the girls this time, and they manage to hold their own until the musketeers arrive. As the girls fight off enemies, Fudo searches for a shortcut to the roof. The doors are all locked, but he suggests breaking through one, just as Satori smashes in and leaps from the balcony to greet him. She cheerfully says she's waited a long time to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, Warabi watches masked girls release Masuko, and as the door blasts open, Fudo steps in and asks if she's ready for the final round. Warabi sees Rin and Mary and questions if Fudo is really worth their pride as supreme swords. They insist it's their job to supervise him, but Warabi then points out all the freaky situations they keep getting into with him. Fudo fires back, saying once he wins, Warabi will have to wear a sumo belt and be broadcast to the whole school. She draws her sword and brings out Kyobo again. Mary hears the musketeers approaching and goes to stop them while Rin lashes out at Warabi for always hiding behind Kyobo. Fudo tells Rin to move aside and prepares to dodge Kyobo's first strike, but ends up eating a brutal punch to the face. Dizzy from the punch, Fudo demands to know when Kyobo gained such deadly hands. Rin says he once sparred with the goat himself, Jake Paul, and urges Fudo to keep fighting. With Kyobo occupied, Rin charges Warabi, but Warabi dodges with ease, lands the first hit, and mocks Rin for leaving her brain at home. Rin pulls out Warabi's weapon from her own shoulder and accuses her of having no honor, but Warabi reminds her that fighting fair was never part of the deal. Rin then tries one of her advanced techniques, but Warabi blocks it and knocks Rin's sword away, aiming for her throat. Rin narrowly dodges but gets karate chopped in the face. She tries another move, but Warabi blocks that too and kicks her aside. The two clash again in a fierce strength battle, and Warabi almost takes out Rin's leg, but Rin flips it and kicks her away, warning Warabi not to underestimate her again. Meanwhile, Mary disarms Kinu, and Fudo dodges a slash from Kyobo before firing another magic bullet. but his arm starts to go numb from overuse, so he backs off and ends up cornered. Mary tells Kinu to give up, but she lunges for her weapons. Nico jumps in and hurls metal bolts, causing Mary to bleed. Warabi prepares for a finishing move, but Rin swears she'll stop her, and Warabi tells her to quit pretending chasing Fudo around all day like a fangirl is part of her duties. Rin freezes, shaken by the insult, but Fudo calls out to her and Mary, thanking them for standing by him. He notices Kyobo's finally showing signs of fatigue from all the magic bullets, and when Kyobo charges once more, Fudo fakes him out by pretending to fire another shot. Kyobo lowers his guard, and Fudo lands a clean punch to the face, knocking him out cold. Meanwhile, Mary barrels past the musketeers with a final charge, dropping them as she runs through. Then, Rin jumps back into the fight and catches Warabi off guard, knocking her down with a powerful technique. Nono and Choka show up just in time to see that the challenge is already over. Fudo asks them to help put Warabi in the sumo belt, but remembering how he once made them lose control, they assume he's trying something kinky again and chase him across the rooftop for revenge. The next day, Rin finally gets a new mask to cover her face, but after thinking about Fudo's compliment, she tucks it away instead. Right after that, Nono walks in to admire her, as usual. Rin asks how she looks without the mask, and Nono tells her she looks even better than ever before. Meanwhile, Mary's testing out a new fragrance and asks Choka what she thinks, starting another round of endless praise. Later, the two arrive at school and immediately notice something annoying, that nearly every girl on campus suddenly wants to get close to Fudo because of his win over Kyobo. As the fangirls around him grow louder, Fudo barely notices, as he's too tired to care and just wants to nap in class. Rin wakes him up with a swift nudge of her foot, while Mary fends off a pack of obsessed girls trying to flirt with him. By the end of the day, both girls have had enough, as dealing with their new fanbase is exhausting. As they complain, Fudo strolls by, and they assume he's off to meet one of the girls drooling over him. But he reminds them it's still just lunchtime. They end up eating with him, and he's creeped out by their weird energy. But they explain that it's the only thing keeping his fans from swarming him again. When he notices someone watching him, they distract him with their jealousy. He tells them to stop being dramatic, and it backfires, earning him a harsh lesson in what not to say to girls on their period. After class ends, Fudo heads out, and Mary and Rin wonder why he didn't say anything about their new looks. As they leave, Warabi emerges from hiding with Kyobo, and she's convinced that Fudo's popularity with the girls must be some sort of dark magic and says they need to investigate it. That night at dinner, Mary and Rin couldn't stop talking about Fudo, which made Nono and Choka grow concerned. Mary brings up the idea of punishing Fudo again to snap him out of it, and Rin says no at first, but after thinking it over, she agrees it might be the only way to deal with his uncontrollable riz. Later, Fudo shivers out of nowhere, but tells Masuko he's fine. However, Masuko is more focused on a mysterious figure watching from the shadows. That night, Fudo crashes into bed, mumbling about how weirdly tired he feels before passing out. The next morning, he surprises everyone by waking up on time. He says it's thanks to a good night's rest and casually tells Rin her usual school uniform looks nice. He compliments Mary's usual perfume too before heading out. They stop him for the routine inspection and decide to delay their punishment plans. Mary checks his bag while Rin pats him down, and then suddenly finds a photo in his pocket and freaks out. Mary takes a look and also loses it, and they demand an explanation. Fudo sees the photo of Satori on him like she's Kim K and he's Ray J, and goes pale. He insists he has no idea how that picture even exists, but they don't buy it. He bolts, running until he bumps into Kyobo. As he tries to explain, Kyobo lets out a deep growl. When Mary and Rin arrive, they only see Warabi and Kyobo, so they move on, still hunting Fudo down. After they leave, Fudo thanks Kyobo, only to get a slobbery lick across the face. Warabi tells him Kyobo is actually female, and then asks why the girls are trying to clap him dead. Fudo vents about how crazy everything's gotten, and Warabi laughs, but he's genuinely worried about why Satori would go this far. Warabi guesses it's a setup to ruin what he is going with Rin and Mary. That's when he remembers that his Slim Jim wasn't even awake in the photo, and that there was a light beam covering it. He believes that the original picture must prove it's fake, and Warabi quickly pieces together that he's planning to sneak into the girls' dorm to retrieve it. She warns him that all the traps were upgraded after his last break-in, and he shrugs it off. But later that night, he ends up tied up in a torture room getting pummeled by Mary and Rin during an aggressive interrogation. After several rounds of spinning and beating, Mary stops when she notices old scars on his body. She orders Nono and Choka to untie him. As she and Rin leave, they quietly wonder where those scars came from while Fudo struggles to catch his breath. Warabi finds him, hands him some bread, and calls him a maniac for actually going through with the plan. Hours ago, he'd explained that he was going to turn himself in just to gain easier access to the dorms. She had decided to help him, partly to understand why Satori was setting him up. As she helps him to his feet, she asks why he's going so far. He remembers seeing tears in Rin's eyes, but says she doesn't need to help if it's too much. Just then, Kyobo knocks him over with a big, wet nudge, and Warabi smiles and says they're both seeing this through. Soon, they reach Satori's room. Fudo starts messing with her toothbrush, so Warabi nearly jams it down his throat for being distracted. After searching the room with no luck, she figures Satori must be keeping the photo on her, and that means one thing: they'll have to ambush her in the bath. He agrees to the plan, but she warns him that Satori is dangerously unhinged. They start moving out, but Fudo triggers a trap and nearly gets decapitated. Warabi scolds him about the new security features, and as if that's not enough, they hear footsteps. He hides behind Kyobo just before Mijai and Saki walk by. But then Fudo realizes that his hands are squishing Kyobo's fuzzy melons, and Kyobo hits peak pleasure, collapsing. Warabi quickly covers him with her own body to distract the girls until a passing bear cub pulls their attention. Once they escape, Warabi nearly chops his head off, but holds back. Later in the dressing room, they still couldn't find the photo. But then Warabi notices that Satori's sword is missing. Just then, a masked girl, Satori's second-in-command, enters the room. Before Fudo can ask what she's planning to do with a bamboo stick, she fires a dart, but Warabi blocks it with her hand. As she tries to come up with a plan, Satori steps out of the bath, looking like a snack, and says that she's been waiting for him. After covering her plots to help him focus, Fudo tries to figure out what Satori actually wants, and that's when he notices the small pouch around her neck. As memories from the other night come flooding back, she attacks again, but this time, he catches it effortlessly and accuses her of being the stalker. He suspects she drugged his food by blackmailing Masuko, but Satori reveals that Masuko has been helping her from the start. That's when Fudo realizes it all began when they took him down from the cross of shame. While she watched him all day, Masuko helped sneak her into his room and quietly left. Then, Satori stripped for the photos. At some point, Fudo started to wake up, but she gave him another dose, this time through a kiss, making him pass out again. She tells him the original photo is in her neck pouch, and while Fudo tries to figure out how to grab it, Mary rants to Choka about all the red flags she missed about Fudo's degeneracy. Choka agrees with every word, and when Mary brings up how he rejected her body, she tears up. To bury the feeling, she forces herself to keep drinking and insists that the grape juice is stronger than any alcohol. In Rin's room, a similar scene is playing out. Nono tries to help her feel better by saying she has hated Fudo ever since he stole her first kiss. Rin decides she's had enough of the drama and cuts the conversation short. Meanwhile, Masuko returns to his room, full of guilt over his betrayal, and spots Fudo's permit lying on the floor. Back at the bath, Fudo asks Satori why she randomly decided to mount him in the middle of the night, and she says it's because he completely annoys her. As they talk, Rin is getting ready for bed, still thinking about Fudo. She tries to block it from her mind, and Nono quietly wonders if she should be worried. In the bath, Fudo puts on his gloves, ready to fight. Satori invites him to join her, but he asks if she could at least get dressed. She insists that her body is essential to her plan and squeezes her own cheek, triggering his powers and leaving him struggling to keep control. Warabi kicks him into the bath, warning him to stay alert. She then turns to face the masked psycho and immediately starts feeling the effects of Satori's poison darts. Warabi stabs herself in the leg to fight the dizziness and prepares for battle. Fudo, meanwhile, is adjusting to Satori's fan service and says it's better than watching dudes in the bath. She tells him she has a question. but then suddenly launches a surprise attack that sends him flying through the glass wall, and then she asks if he has a preferred torture method. He blocks her stab with his glove, but she quickly switches to slicing. Though he dodges, she still lands a cut on his cheek. As he reaches for the photo pouch, she deflects him with her sword. She tries stabbing his stomach, and though he evades again, he ends up with a deep slash across his back. Realizing she's completely unpredictable and still insanely distracting, he calls her a monster for going this far. He blocks her next attack and sees an opening, but it's a trap, and he dodges just in time. After another cut to the face, he claims to have finally read her moves and identifies the technique she's using. She replies that it's only one of 10 special techniques, then targets his leg. He dodges, but she hits him with a knee to the ribs and follows up with a new slicing move. While Fudo is trying to catch his breath, Warabi, on the other hand, is fighting to stay awake. But Satori's sidekick smashes her hand with the bamboo stick, and the new dose of poison clouds her vision again. Warabi cuts herself a second time and changes tactics to stay in the fight. Fudo fails to dodge yet another slice to his back and realizes that Satori is combining multiple elite techniques into one hybrid form, and she praises him for figuring it out. Then her demeanor changes, and she asks if he knows how to play word chain. Warabi, now reaching her limit, decides to go all out, but her attacks are weak and rushed. She loses her grip on her sword and leaves herself open to the masked attacker. Back with Fudo, Satori steps closer until her sword is almost at his neck. He grabs it, but she unleashes another unique technique to shift its direction and cuts into his arm. She explains how her attacks are unpredictable because she mixes styles randomly. As Fudo struggles to block, her moves get sloppy, and that's when he remembers how his body affected the other girls. Testing a theory, he lures her into the washroom and drops his towel to reveal the Slim Jim ready for battle. Satori freezes, then threatens to chop it off, but he easily dodges her strikes. He explains that no girl has ever been able to think straight after seeing what he's packing.
Magic.
Meanwhile, Warabi, now fully recovered, grabs the bamboo stick and uses a judo throw to slam the masked girl. She dodges the darts and declares the poison has finally worn off. Around that time, Tsukuyo heads toward the bath, but the dorm's caretaker warns her that Satori is using it. Tsukuyo, relying on her heightened senses, decides to investigate anyway. Warabi, having pummeled the masked girl, reaches to pull off the mask and finds something completely unexpected. At the same time, Fudo defeats Satori, but before he can breathe, she holds the photo pouch over the water, threatening to destroy it. When she dares him to stop her, he takes off his glove and slaps her into the bath. She's shocked and asks if he's that worried about being expelled, but Fudo says he's already accepted that risk. So she asks why he smacked her so hard, and he says it's because she made Rin cry, which is something he can't let slide. As she sinks into the water, Satori murmurs that she finds human emotions fascinating. Fudo reaches out a hand and tells her to stop pretending she isn't one of them. For a moment, the act fades, and she hides her face in the water, too embarrassed to show it. Afterward, Fudo dreams of Satori is doing very unholy things with her mouth, only to open his eyes and find her standing over him, and Kyobo licking his face. She casually tells him they're in the infirmary, and that's when he realizes he's still exposed and quickly covers up. Satori points to where his clothes are and tells him Warabi's resting in the next bed. Confused, he asks how he ended up here. Earlier, back in the bath, when Fudo reached out his hand, Satori was about to take it, until she heard footsteps approaching. Without hesitation, she pulled him in and shoved his face between her plots, telling him to stay quiet. The musketeers had entered the changing room. While two checked on Warabi, Tsunami went to unmask their mysterious attacker. But the masked girl still had enough fight left to block her. Tsunami knocked her out just as Tsukuyo arrived with Eva. At first, Tsukuyo thought they were the cause of all the chaos, but after inspecting Warabi and realizing she'd been poisoned, she told them to get help. Tsunami ordered the musketeers to carry both Warabi and the masked girl to the infirmary. Once they were gone, Tsukuyo entered the bath and demanded that Satori stop hiding Fudo. Satori played dumb, acting like she barely knew who he was, and Tsukuyo didn't press further, not wanting to get soaked because of some creep hiding on someone's melons. Before she left, she told Satori to meet her by the fountain to talk. explaining she didn't want to discuss anything in front of Fudo. After Tsukuyo left, Fudo finally gasped for air and complained that Satori nearly drowned him with her melons, but she told him to be grateful, as Tsukuyo would have sliced him up if she found him. He tried to walk away but collapsed from the damage he'd taken. His body, completely wrecked from the fight, forced his brain to shut down. Elsewhere, Rin is tossing and turning, trying to count sheep to fall asleep. But all she can think about is Fudo's face. She gives up and sneaks down the hall toward the punishment room to get to Fudo. But there, she runs into Mary, who nearly jumps out of her skin. They both awkwardly pretend that they were heading to the cafeteria. To sell the lie, they sit and sip tea together, forcing small talk while waiting for the other to admit the truth. Choka and Nono eventually walk in, nearly busting their cover, but then take a seat too. When Choka suggests everyone head back to bed, Rin and Mary claim to still be thirsty and challenge each other to a tea drinking contest. Minutes later, they're bloated to the brim and exhausted with the fake competition. That's when Satori walks in and casually reveals where Fudo is. They're shocked as she's not supposed to know, and when they demand an explanation, she calmly says Fudo attacked her. Satori then tells them she made it look like she and Warabi broke Fudo out and had a duel over who gets to deal with him. As Fudo pulls his shirt on, she reminds him she still has a ruptured eardrum. He apologizes, but she brushes it off and tells him to prepare for Rin and Mary's arrival before wishing him luck. Rin walks in menacingly moments later, and Fudo braces for the worst, but instead, she bows and apologizes after knowing the truth. Before he can respond, she looks up and sees his golden glizzy still on full display. She almost loses it, but takes a deep breath and calms herself. Meanwhile, outside the dorm, Satori hears something and finds Masuko, wearing a mask that clearly wasn't made for someone his size. Back in the infirmary, Rin finishes her apology and tells Fudo he can do what he wants. He tells her to close her eyes, and she prepares for a kiss, but instead, he pulls off her mask and tells her to keep her hands behind her back. She's clearly hurt, saying she'd rather show him her body than have him look at her face, and feeling curious, Fudo asks why she wears the mask. Rin opens up and says that her mom started calling her chopped after her dad left with another woman. Since Rin resembled her dad, her mother forced her to wear a mask and took out her frustration on her, and the mask became her shield. While she speaks, Warabi, hiding behind a curtain, tries desperately not to pee, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Rin tells Fudo that the compliment he gave her the other day made it a bit easier to be without the mask. He hands it back and says to keep it until the day she no longer needs it, then destroy it herself. Fudo turns around and quietly shares his past. He tells her that he was abandoned at birth, then raised by a deranged old man who abused him, but called it training. As he shares the pain he's been through, Warabi can't stop thinking about relieving herself, and Kyobo, sensing her emergency, hands her a bucket. Satori, listening nearby, tears up. Fudo tries to cheer her up, but then Mary enters to apologize. Instead of just saying sorry, she presents herself to him and tells him to do whatever he wants.
Finally!
He refuses, and she asks if it's because he already did it with Rin. By sunrise, Fudo stumbles back into the dorm and collapses on his bed. Masuko tries to talk, asking if Fudo hates him for drugging him. But Fudo says no, saying that he understands that Masuko only did it to protect the other guys and still considers him a friend. Masuko tells him to check under his pillow. Fudo does, and finds his permit, now stamped with Satori's seal. In that moment, he forgets all the chaos he's endured and just smiles. Days later, Fudo has a nightmare where Amu almost ended him, and he never felt so powerless. When he wakes up, he reaches for his alarm clock, wondering why he dreamed about that. Meanwhile, one of the younger girls who usually brings food to Amu goes to her room, only to find it completely empty. Not long after, two sus, glizzy-loving dudes hop into the shower to freshen up. But while they're rinsing off, one of them hears something weird. They try to ignore it until they see something terrifying outside the window and scream in absolute terror. Back in the dorm, Fudo casually brushes off their panic, saying that the monster is probably more terrified of their chopped looks. The soy boys ignore the insult and plead with him to take it seriously. Masuko also warns him it could be a real problem, but Fudo waves them off and tries to go back to sleep. That's when Rin shows up and starts yelling for him to get up. Before he leaves, Masuko hands over the permit and asks why he's acting so strange. The femboys freak out when they see how many stamps he already has. And once Fudo's gone, Masuko explains that getting the last one won't be as simple as using his Riz, as he has to deal with Tsukuyo. Elsewhere, Tsukuyo informs the headmistress, Yukino, that Emu is missing and that her eating habits have been strange lately. They quickly contact the staff and cancel classes for the day. Up on the roof, Satori is skipping around, admiring a photo she took with Fudo, until a mysterious girl suddenly starts speaking to her. Outside the boys' dorm, Fudo asks Rin why Mary isn't with her. Rin explains that things have gotten hectic at the girls' dorm. At the same time, Warabi is on a frantic search for Duomo, Kyobo's baby bear, with help from the Three Musketeers. With no luck in the dorms, Warabi tells them that if Satori finds him first, she'll smother him with love. Meanwhile, as Fudo and Rin head to school, they run into Mary. She's on a desperate hunt for Choka's missing wig and begs them to help, and informs them how Choka refuses to leave her room without it. Back on the roof, Satori debates whether to get involved in any of the chaos, when that same mysterious girl keeps chatting with her. While searching for the wig, Mary overhears Warabi talking to the musketeers about Duomo and completely misreads the situation. She convinces herself they've taken Choka's wig so Warabi can claim it as her own. When Fudo and Rin find her, she's still in full meltdown mode, trying to make sense of it all. Warabi shows up to ask if they've seen Fudo, and Mary loses it, accusing her of stealing what's hers. Trying to settle the confusion, Fudo explains they're all actually looking for different things, but the group quickly descends into an argument over whose problem is more important. As Fudo tries to calm everyone down, he suddenly remembers the femboys from earlier and pieces things together. Back at the bath, the femboys are showering again when they spot the monster once more and panic completely. They throw everything within reach, and one of them manages to grab the creature and hurl it. It lands in front of Fudo, Rin, and Mary, who realize it's just Duomo wearing Choka's wig, and they bring him back. Just then, Nono walks out with a short girl, revealed to be Choka without her wig. She immediately asks for it back, but Duomo has destroyed it beyond saving. Rin tells her to forget about the wig so they can get to class, only to be reminded by Nono that school's cancelled today. Mary then tells them about Amu's disappearance, and Fudo wonders if it's the same Amu who once beat him up. They soon reunite with Warabi to return Duomo, and she's relieved Satori didn't find him, but can't shake off a strange gut feeling. Tsunami mentions something suspicious about the masked girl they fought before, who looks eerily like the girl now chatting with Satori, and it turns out that they're sisters. When Misogi, the mysterious girl, starts voicing worries, Satori smacks her and says her whining makes her ears bleed. Suddenly, Amu appears and tells Satori she's crossed a line. She holds up a copy of the photo, rips it, and calls her a lunatic who needs to be punished, but Satori just shrugs at her statement. Back on the ground, Warabi sees Amu standing with Satori on the roof, and Warabi quickly mounts Kyobo and shouts at them to stay clear of the area. Up above, Satori casually tells Amu she's got things to do and tries to leave. But Amu draws her sword and unleashes a powerful technique. Somehow, Satori still manages to land a hit, but Amu brushes it off, retaliates with a deadly counter using her sharpened fingers, and declares that she's putting an end to this madness. Just as she's about to strike again, Misogi fires a dart, but Amu catches it with her fingers. Misogi tries to speak, but Satori charges in. Warabi, still racing toward the roof, hopes she can reach them in time. On the roof, Misogi has collapsed. Amu gets ready to end Satori for good, but Misogi throws herself into the attack. When Amu tastes her blood, she realizes the truth that Misogi really is her sister. For the longest time, Satori always had a superiority complex, even towards her own sister. But that all changed when Misogi got on her level, pushed her down, and switched identities with her, with Misogi claiming her sister's identity. But even while lying wounded, the real Satori tells Misogi she still loves her, and the words bring Misogi to tears as her long-lost humanity returns. She screams in anguish at the sight of her wounded sister, only for Amu to land the final blow to silence her. Warabi arrives seconds too late with Kyobo. She challenges Amu to a duel, and Kyobo joins in, ready to fight. They both attack together, but Amu lands brutal counters without taking much damage herself. As she mocks Warabi for even trying to stop her, Fudo walks with Masuko nearby and spots Tsukuyo. Fudo sees his chance to get her stamp, but Masuko panics and warns him that Tsukuyo is the most dangerous of the Supreme Five Swords. Fudo ignores him and goes to riz her up, but just as he gets close, Tsukuyo swings with a blade so fast it cuts the air, and Fudo freezes in his tracks. Tsukuyo puts her sword away, but Fudo is still shaken. He trips over a rock and lands flat on his back, and she warns him that if she hadn't held back, he'd be shooting buckets with Kobe Bryant by now. She calmly explains that she's been put in charge of watching over him, and that he's already used up his chances, as he's allowed 2 strikes, but he's now at 3. She lists them. First, sneaking into the girls' dorm to fool around with Rin. Second, barging into the girls' bath. And third, making her wait outside the infirmary until she got sick. Fudo's annoyed and asks why someone as short as her is in charge of him. Tsukuyo doesn't answer with words, but instead, she slices a butterfly clean in half with her sword to prove a point. Fudo scolds her for hurting a harmless butterfly, but she says she honestly can't tell if it was a butterfly or a moth. That's when he realizes that she's blind, and she can't see a thing but has insanely sharp hearing. He finally starts to understand just how good her sword skills are, and Tsukuyo adds that they're both trained in the same sword style, but unlike her, Fudo never had a proper teacher to show him the way. Meanwhile, back on the rooftop, Kyobo is throwing punches like he's trying to defeat Prime Mike Tyson. But Amu makes a few hand signs like she's a ninja, and with a single strike, she takes Kyobo down. Right after that, the 3 musketeers show up to help Warabi fight Amu. Warabi tells them to run, but they refuse, and Amu overpowers them like it's nothing. As this chaos unfolds, Fudo hears the battle from where he is, and Tsukuyo casually lets him know that Amu is up on the roof, tossing the musketeers around like nothing and showcasing her dominance. She tries to keep talking to Fudo, preaching about how she believes that Demon Slayer is a trash anime without the godly animation, but suddenly realizes he's already taken off running, and that ticks her off. On the roof, Warabi begs Amu to spare her musketeers, and Amu responds by slicing Warabi across the eyes, leaving her bleeding and crying. Her scream is so loud that the entire school hears it, and the rest of the 5 swords immediately rush to the rooftop. Fudo gets there first, and the moment he sees the battered bodies, it brings back painful memories of the trauma Amu once caused him. He rushes to Warabi, her eyes soaked in blood, and yells for help, and the headmaster shows up behind him. By this time, Amu stands face to face with Tsukuyo. They start trading barbs, but before anything serious happens, the other 5 swords arrive. They demand an explanation for the screams, and Amu casually invites them to come closer, so she can show them exactly what caused it. Back with Fudo, he's panicking about Warabi's injury, and the headmaster tells him that while Warabi is hurt, her eyes can be treated with surgery. But more importantly, she says it's time for him to deal with Amu, and when Fudo looks over, his heart drops when he sees his friends facing off with Amu. Rin and Mary charge in, but Amu blocks both of them with her legs, which are also weapons. They're stunned, and Amu praises them for actually working together, unlike last time, and gives credit to Fudo for bringing this change. She then reveals she trained in special karate, which helped turn her body into a human weapon, giving her the title, the swordswoman without a sword. She approaches Rin and Mary's sisters. Rin and Mary shout at them to run, but the sisters refuse to back down out of loyalty. That's when Tsukuyo steps in, cutting off Amu before she can get any closer. Before doing anything, Tsukuyo turns to Nono and asks a strange question, whether they are friends. Nono is caught off guard but thinks for a moment and says that they are indeed friends. With that, Tsukuyo channels her inner plot armor and power of friendship, and says she'll protect her friends no matter what. Amu smirks, eager to pit her blade like limbs against Tsukuyo's sword, but Tsukuyo isn't worried. With just one glance, she sees through Amu's style and calls her out, saying that Amu's entire technique is based on counterattacks. Tsukuyo then points out that her sword is faster than Amu's hands. Amu starts feeling uneasy as Tsukuyo gives off a calm, icy aura. In one explosive move, Tsukuyo slices Amu 3 times in just 3 seconds, and Amu bleeds, while everyone watching is stunned. But Tsukuyo isn't unscathed, as she's also bleeding from Amu's counter, and her sword is broken. Amu picks up the blade's tip and laughs, mocking Tsukuyo for fighting with an actual toy sword. She sees an opening and gets ready to finish the job. Even with a shattered weapon, Tsukuyo takes a stance, prepared for one more strike. But before she can move, Fudo rushes in and pulls her back, stepping in to take her place. Seeing Fudo, Amu yells his name, furious that he stopped her. But Fudo is ready to face Amu himself.
Let's go!
As her furious scream echoes through every part of the academy, Fudo rushes in with a fierce punch, hoping to silence her once and for all. A memory flashes back to when they were still at their old school. On his very first day, Fudo stepped in to protect a weak student from bullies, and as he looked up, he noticed Amu watching him from inside the building. Later, he met her for the first time, and at first, he thought she was just a tough tomboy, so he jokingly asked if she wanted a kiss. She challenged him to try it, and he commented on her hat being crooked, then moved in as if he was actually going to kiss her, but stopped himself, deciding not to go too far with a stranger. Strangely, she found him interesting, and she offered him friendship, which Fudo accepted, sensing that she wasn't like anyone else at that school. Later that same day, Fudo met up again with the weak classmate he had helped earlier, and he offered to show Fudo around the school. But just then, Amu appeared with the exact same plan. When Fudo said he'd meet her later and started walking away with the other student, she knocked the guy out without hesitation and warned Fudo never to hang out with weaklings again. Back in the present, Fudo lets all that pent-up anger explode in one brutal punch. He lands a clean shot. But at the same time, Amu stabs him in the gut and knocks him backward. The girls gasp, thinking he's done for, but Fudo stands back up and reveals a book he had tucked into his jacket, one that he prepared specifically to block her attack. He explains that after their last fight, he's learned to be more careful. Before they can clash again, Tsukuyo cuts in, asking why he pulled her away from the battle, and whether it was to protect her so they could be friends. Fudo bluntly says no, and that he's too busy for friendships and only pulled Tsukuyo back because she was in the way. Amu jumps in at that moment to say how ironic it is that he's made connections with almost every strong girl on campus, yet here she is, someone who was once his friend, standing alone. Fudo looks around at the chaos she's caused and says it clearly that he's never hated her more than he does now. Her heart cracks at his words, and deep down, quietly, she promises to send him to the afterlife. Because if she can't have him, then no one will. Fudo steadies himself and puts on his gloves, searching for a strategy. Rin wants to encourage him, but her nerves get the better of her, and she stays silent. Then she and Mary both notice the scars Amu has from Tsukuyo's earlier attacks, and realize that maybe she's not unstoppable. Rin finally speaks up, telling Fudo to give it everything he's got. He drops into a battle stance while Amu, tired of waiting, charges straight at him. She readies a counterattack, but Fudo dodges and tries to use the magic bullet. She slips past it, forcing him to jump back and stay alert. He goes for another shot, but she activates a deadly move, almost slicing his gut open. As she lines up her next attack, Fudo tries a surprise hit, but takes an elbow to the stomach. She grabs his jacket, aiming to finish the battle. But Fudo slips out of it and dodges. Amu flings the jacket over his head to block his view. But then he hears Tsukuyo's call for him. He jumps toward her just as Amu's kick shreds the jacket in two.
I got you, homie!
When he lands near Tsukuyo's blade, she tells him that because he helped her confidence, she's just repaying a favor and wants to help him as well. She starts yapping all of his mistakes, from attacking to rash to exposing his own plan of using the magazine, which ends horribly for him. But then she whispers to him what can actually defeat Amu, and while Fudo deems the plan crazy, he agrees to follow it. Fudo rises, more determined than ever. He says he'll bring Amu down for everything she's done to the people he cares about. He takes off his tie and thinks back to the pain his abusive foster father put him through. But those thoughts are quickly replaced with the new memories he's made with the girls, ones that give him strength. As he stands tall, ready to put everything on the line, Amu's cold resolve begins to crumble. She watches him side with the others and feels her heart break all over again. All she can think about is how empty her life has been without him, how deeply it hurt when he rejected her. So now, her only answer is to end it for good, as if she can't have him, She'll make sure no one else ever will. On the day Fudo turns down Mary's offer and earns her stamp, Amu is secretly watching, and she struggles to accept how easily he's fitting in with the others. Frustrated, she vents on the poor Buddha statue again and spirals into a self-made therapy session, thinking deeply about her feelings for Fudo. She eventually concludes that life without him isn't worth living. Back in the present, when Fudo throws off his tie, his abs make her mind go blank for a second. He reminds her of all her past threats to end him and tells her to stay focused, then rushes in at full speed. As Fudo charges, he remembers how badly his last 2 attacks failed during their previous fight. So this time, he uses his body as bait to throw off her rhythm. She still manages to cut into his chest, but he pushes through the pain and grabs her chest just long enough to blast her away with the magic bullet. Back then, he had used that move right after taking a serious hit and passed out from the effort. Amu was about to finish him off, but when she saw his face, her heart wavered. Instead of ending him, she just sat with him in the rain, staring at him in silence. Now, both of them get back on their feet. The girls watching are shocked that Amu is still standing after that last blast. But so is Fudo, and he gears up for round 2. He lands a punch that cracks her jaw, but she returns the favor with one that almost knocks his teeth out. They trade heavy hits, refusing to hold back. While they're fighting, Yukino is still on the roof, chatting on the phone with Tsukuyo's sister, who's dying to know how things turn out. Tsukuyo watches the brawl and seems genuinely pleased by the chaos. One of Fudo's punches briefly knocks Amu senseless, but she recovers fast and launches into a wild combo that sends him flying. Rin calls out to him just in time, helping him snap back into focus. He lines up another magic bullet and lands it in her gut, but right then, she digs her nails into his, and everything starts going blurry for him. Before he hits the ground, Amu catches him. She turns the moment into a strange heart-to-heart about their violent version of love. After thinking about everything, she chooses to give him the upper hand, believing she doesn't deserve to win. He tries asking if they can stop, but she tells him not to be a coward and to finish what he started so she can move on from her feelings. Fudo gets a brief flashback and chooses to end the fight his way. He powers up, unleashing his true strength, and takes her down for good. She's unable to stand afterward, giving Fudo the victory. But suddenly, Fudo feels cold steel at his neck, and Tsukuyo is behind him, asking for a duel. She says he's still a beginner at his own technique and declares herself his new teacher. Everyone is stunned, and she tells him he now has 3 chances to mess up, then tempts him with her stamp. Rin and Mary know Fudo can't stand being blackmailed, but before he can give an answer, Satori's masked girls show up to take care of Amu. Fudo tries to stop them, but Tsukuyo holds him back. Just before the batons land, the headmistress, Yukino, arrives and throws them aside. She tells everyone to go back inside, then turns to Fudo and says he's expelled. That night, Fudo lies in bed, wrapped in bandages because of his battle wounds, and he tells Masuko that he's accepted his fate. Masuko reminds him of everything he went through to collect all those stamps and gives him some space to think. A few days later, Warabi receives a photo of Kyobo, who's fully recovered. She's chatting with the musketeers when Fudo shows up to check on her. He tells her about the expulsion, and she tries to stop him, but her injuries keep her from standing, giving Fudo an opening to wish her luck and leaves. At the same time, Satori wakes up in her room just as Fudo arrives, and she asks if she can look at him one last time. She pulls a creepy face to hide her sadness, but Fudo jokes that he's seen worse, and they both laugh. When she asks for another bathroom duel, he politely declines and says goodbye. As he leaves, he bumps into Misogi at the door. She fumbles Satori's name while calling out, but Satori says she can call her whatever she wants, as she's done pretending to be someone else. Meanwhile, Rin and Mary are with Yukino, trying to convince her to reverse the expulsion. They plead their case, but Yukino tells them the decision is final. Later, Fudo runs into Tsukuyo by the academy fountain. She asks if he's considered her offer, and he reminds her that he's expelled, but she tells him Amu has already left for the airport. He takes off running but stops when she asks if he has all the stamps. He says it doesn't matter anymore and continues on. At the airport, Amu is just about to board when Fudo arrives. She asks why he came, and he says he wants answers. He also blames her for pushing him into accepting Tsukuyo's challenge just to get her stamp. Then, half serious, he asks if she wants to run away with him, and she turns him down, saying she's always lived by her own rules and will start to live more freely. Before leaving, she pulls him close by the tie and kisses him. Then, she pushes him to the ground to show that she's his Dambi mommy and tells him to tell the others that despite all the cheeks he will clap in the future, he belongs to her and no one else. He's confused and asks for clarity, so she finally shares the feelings she's kept bottled up for so long, then walks away. When Fudo returns by bus, he sees Rin, who acts like she didn't get all dressed up just to see him. She asks if his talk with Amu was worth it and reminds him that she nearly ended him not long ago. Fudo decides to keep the kiss a secret and says they probably won't see each other again due to the expulsion. Just then, Mary shows up and calls Rin a traitor for getting to him first. Then she shares some unexpected good news that Yukino said she was just joking about the expulsion, and Fudo is still a student. In exchange, however, Rin and Mary have to be his official watchdogs. On their way back, Rin stops them, pulls out her sword, and reminds Fudo of the rules she gave him on day 1. Like before, he refuses her terms and tells them to meet him at school. However, this time, they let him go without trying to behead him. When he arrives, he finds everyone waiting to welcome him back, and he grins, knowing that he has finally found a place to call home. If you watched this anime recap until the end, comment down Riz King. If you like anime recaps like this, watch this video.